Thank you for everyone coming to my talk. And is everyone still awake after lunch? No? Okay, today we're going to talk about nation-state Moneymule hunting season, APT attack targeting financial institute. So first we're going to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Qian Shen, and you can just call me Ashley. I'm an independent researcher, and I'm from Taiwan. I'm also a co-founder of a community called Hekan Girls. It's a security community for women in Taiwan. And I focus on APT research, malware analysis, and threat intelligence.
Hello, my name is Min-Chang Zhang. I'm a researcher in threat analysis team in Korea Financial Security Institute, and I am a co-author the threat intelligence report, LIPO, campaign LIPO and area. And I am a graduate student pursuing in major in cyber warfare at Security Analysis and Evaluation Laboratory in Korea University. My supervisor, Professor Seung-Joo Kim, is here. Thank you for coming. And this is Kyung-Joo Kwa. He also works for KFSI with me. He is not able to come here because he has to take care of his 100 days baby. He is main author of Threat Intelligence Report, Campaign Rifle and Area. He is a member of National Police Agency Cybercrime Advisory Committee. He has been a speaker of many international conferences. Thank you.
Okay, so here's our agenda today. First, we will start with the background. I'm going to tell you a little bit backgrounds about the APT groups we're going to talk today. And then we will introduce some malware and attack cases by 3 APT groups. And then in the end, we will show some TTP and key finding of us. So first, the background. From the topic, I believe most of you already know that today we are going to talk about nation-state attackers and the APT attack. And talk about nation-state attacker, most people will think about the cyber espionage attack, which they mostly target some governments and some government affiliates or some large corporations. And usually the cyber espionage attack, they aim for confidential data or intelligence information. And on the other hand, usually the cybercrime and some Moneymule, they mostly targets for financial motivations. For example, they would target banks, or they would target some credit card user or bank account user for gaining money. However, today what we are going to talk about today is that our observation is showing that some nation-state attackers, they are now shifting their targets and their focus to join the battlefield of Moneymule in the past few years. So we observe some nation-state attackers, they start to attack banks and some financial institutes to get money too. So who are these attackers? Basically, there are 3 groups which we are going to introduce today. The first group is called Lazarus. It's a group revealed in last year by a report called Operation Blockbuster from Novata. And this group, their main targets is the domestic government, financial institute, and they also targeted some broadcasting system. And it's believed that their main purpose is to cause the social chaos. So they have done some major incidents before. For example, like in 2009, 2011, they launched a large-scale DDoS attack targeting the US and South Korea. And their most famous incident was in 2014. They attacked the Sony Picture Entertainment. And the second group is called Bunarov. Bunarov is kind of slightly different from Lazarus, but it's a subgroup of Lazarus. They mainly focus on the financial institute, so their main purpose is to gain financial profit. And they have done some large-scale attack in the past year, according the SWIFT banking attack, and also in this year they attacked the Polish Financial Supervisory Authority, and then launched a watering hole attack on the website to deliver malware to over 100 banks in Europe. And also, they not only target banks in Europe, they also target banks in South Korea and also some Bitcoin company in South Korea. And there's a report about this group. It's called Lazaro Under the Hood, published by Kaspersky. And the last group is called Andario. This group is their main purpose is to collect information, collect intelligence. So before, they didn't done any attack targeting financial institute. Like before, they only target some defense industry, or they target some cyber command center or some government. But from this year, we observed they start to attack the ATM now. So there's a report, it's called Campaign Rifle, published by South Korea Financial Security Institute about this group. And this is a timeline we try to mark some of the major incidents attributed to this group. From August last year to this year, there are several incidents that revealed in the news. I tried to mark the incident related to financial motivation with yellow. So you can see here, there's a Bangladesh bank has happened last year, and Polish watering hole attack happened in this year in February. Also in March, they hacked the ATM company in South Korea. And in May, I believe everybody still remember the WannaCry attack. They were attributed to the Lazaro groups. And then recently, they also target a bank in Taiwan. So next, we are going to talk about some malware and some attack cases from this group. And most of the cases we review here are not widely known before. So in this section, I'm going to talk about 3 different cases. And first one is the Korea major bank attack by the Brunnerov group. And before 2017, actually, we seldom see attacks from Brunnerov group, but from the early of 2007, we observed a lot of attacks from them. And this incident was happened in March this year, and the target is one of the top 5 banks in South Korea. And they not only target the bank, they also target the employees of the bank who is in charge of the SWIFT system. They use a vulnerability which is in the VDI virtual desktop infrastructure program, and to share the malware among different virtual hosts. It was a 0-day during that time. This attack didn't cause severe damage because the rapid detections, and eventually only 2 personal PC was infected, fortunately. And this is the vulnerability they use is actually about the namepipe function. Namepipe function is actually a common function provided by Windows Virtual PC components that allow 2 virtual hosts to share files without network. They can share file with namepipe and then build a VPC bus here, and then file can be there will be a channel to allow 2 hosts to share file. But however, the problem is that this feature should be disabled under the setting of 2 segregated network. So what I mean here is the targets, the network environments of the targets actually contain 2 VLAN. So VLAN A is the most important VLAN. This VLAN contains some hosts with confidential data, so this VLAN is not connected to the internet. And VLAN B is contains some employees' PC, so it's allowed to access the internet. And the attack vector here is the attacker, they send spear phishing email, and then the spear phishing email infect the employee's PC here. And when the malware infects the PC, it will activate the namepipe function between 2 different hosts, and then between the host in VLAN A and VLAN B. So when the channel's connection is built, the malware will be able to spread from here and then to the host in the VLAN A. And then when they get the desired data, they will send the data out through VLAN B to the C2 server. So interestingly, the VDI software manufacturer actually insists that the file sharing function via NumPy, this function was disabled. But what we actually found in the malware, in the code, that it's actually not disabled, it's just hidden. So the attacker was still able to use this functionality. And about the malware, there were two malware samples we found in these cases. And the malware belong to a family called Manuscript. This malware has been linked to Blunderov group in other cases before. So the feature of this malware including three. First, it was searched in the internal network, which is the VLAN A, for some specific host related to Swift network. And how do they know? I will tell you later. And the second is to activate the NumPy of a specific process. Here they use the VNSAO process, which is the management process of virtual machine segregation program. And then there is still data from the internal segregating network by using hidden NumPy file sharing feature. And eventually they send the desired data to CNC server. So this is the code showing how they search in the VLAN A for some specific host. And you can see here they are trying to get the computer name. And when they got the computer name, they will compare the string PB with the computer name. Why do they do this? Because actually all the hosts in the bank are, the computer names are following some kind of naming convention. Like here, first the department type and then the employee ID. So, for example, like PB actually stands for a certain department, which is the host containing confidential data will start with PB. So it means that attacker already know about this, and they already know what kind of host, which host they are going to search before they develop this malware. So this screenshot shows the main function in this malware. When this malware is activated, it would try to activate and set the name pile and then connect to other hosts with this pile. And after successful connecting, the malware would read some data and write the data to the pile directly. And here you can see how the malware to get the name pile, and then after getting name pile, it would try to set the mode to the read mode, which is with the argument 0. And here's one of the main characteristics of Manuscript. After searching some specific files from the infected PC, it would write the results in a special structure. And you can see this function is doing like, it would start with the flag, and then the structure is look like this. Here's the typical structures of writing, resolve, or searching files used by Manuscript. So you can see here there's a flag. There are 3 different conditions of the flag, including GYFZ and stars. And if the file is directly, it will start with GUI, and then if the file is normal, it will start with FC, and if it's end of file, it will start with start. And then it also contains the file type, the length of file name, and also the file name. And for the CNC server configurations, it would be right into a registry under Microsoft software. The data in this registry is like shown below. And it's not encoded, so you can see the IP address directly. And when the malware sends the victim's files to C2 server, it would pack this file into a certain bundle and then add some specific file names. In the malware, we can see this code. It's kind of small, but this text is actually encoded. So after a decode function here, you can see the string clearly here. And then you can see here some file name. It's actually just some assigned file name to the victim data. Okay, so that was the first case, the hack targeting a major bank in South Korea. So the next case we want to introduce is an attack targeting an ATM operator company. And this operations was called VNXATN. And this operation was started from February 2015, but the actual information leakage was discovered in March this year. And the target is an ATM operator company, which is in charge of providing and manage more than 2,000 ATM machines in South Korea. They use a zero-day vulnerability in the antivirus program to compromise the ATM server. We will explain that later. And also there's a vulnerability exists in the misconfigurations and management between the ATM machine and ATM update server. And according to the malware and the CNC server, we attribute this attack incident to the Endario groups. This, different from the first one, this attack actually caused a lot of damage. Totally about 1.9 million card information was leaked in this attack. And we investigate this case with the national police, and they collect the hard drive that us to do the analysis. And you can see here is a ATM machine. Actually, this ATM machine is in front of the Financial Security Institute. So actually, MC have withdrawn with this ATM machine, and then his card information was stolen, right? You got a text message from the bank. Yeah. And this graph is showing the attack vector of this operation. So first, you can see there's an antivirus server. I should use this antivirus server here. So there is actually a zero-day vulnerability in this antivirus software. And because all the ATM machines use this antivirus and they connect to this antivirus server, so the attacker exploit this server and then send the malware to about 60 ATM machine. Remember, I say that this company actually in charge of 2,000 ATM machine, but why only 60 ATM machine are infected? I will explain that later. And actually on the ATM server, they found a pair of credentials, unencrypted credential. And then the attacker figured out this is a credential used to log in to the ATM update server, FTP server. It means that there is a FTP server here, and then so attacker found the credential here, so they can use this credential to log in to this ATM update server, which is, I don't know what to say. And then this, from this server, they can update their malware and then use this server to update all the malware on all the ATM machine. And when the ATM machine got infected, it was send the card information to about 4 CNC servers located in South Korea. And this is the program we found on the C2 server that used to exploit the antivirus software. The tool would first, it will try to scan a port. You can see the number here to see if the antivirus is exploitable. And if it's showing the connect success, it means that the exploit is success. And then it can perform some command, for example, like send file, and to upload the file to the server, and then they can run the file on the server. So these two tables here are showing the samples we collect in this case. We list the file name and where's my mouse? Yeah, the file name here and the CNC server here and the category here. And you can see that most of the C2 server in this case are located in South Korea, and they use different kind of proprietary RAT, also some keylogger and the web show. And this table is showing the classification. So you can see they not only use the proprietary malware, they also use some public RAT like Ghost Red and Extreme Red. And here's the malware timeline based on their build time. And you can see from this timeline that although the attack was discovered in 2017, the earliest compiled timestamp here was in November last year. And between this time, they keep compiling new tools for the attack. And before March this year, they were doing some information gathering. All the tools they compiled that time were just doing information gathering. And then after March, they start to steal the data, to leak, to send the data to C2 server. And this table is showing the RDP logging to the compromised server, and they are IP address from the US, from Canada, from Turkey, and there's, among all of these IP address, there's one interesting IP address here, which is from North Korea. And this is the dropper type A. This dropper has the PDB string here. It contains the word VNXATM. So this is why we named this operation with this name. And to be specific, it drops two binary. One is java.exe, this is RT, and another one is java update.exe. And here's the most important malware in this operation. And this malware is mainly doing the data exfiltration, and it was named in many different kind of file names, including these. But all of them are doing the same thing. First, they will search for a file with this file name pattern, which is start from the date and then CHVA. And we will explain what it is later. And this is, they search for the journal files on the ATM machine. The journal files look like this. It contains the transaction date, transaction data, transaction time, the request amounts, and the balance. And after they found these two files, the malware will send them to C2 server. And how do they send to C2 server? This is the code doing this part. So you can see it's actually connecting to a FTP server, and this is the IP address. This is a pair of credentials they use to log into the server, which is Achilles, and then there's a file name that contains the data that you send to C2 server. So during the analysis, we found some files with names CHVA. Remember, I just remembered the malware was searching for this file. So we found this file from C2 server, obviously stolen from the ATM machine. And that's, at the first time, we don't know what it is. And because we open this file and we see this weird string, we don't know what it means. It looks like it's encoding for me. As a reverser, it's like an encoded string. But actually, it was not encrypted. It's just store a bunch of card information data following a standard structure of the IC card. So as shown in the slide, the files contain the card number here. Here is actually the card number. And then you can see the card expiration date, the CVV here, card issuer, card holder. So basically, everything is in this file. But why would this kind of information be stored in the ATM machine? So actually, this is a log file that the ATM operator tried to use it for debugging. For example, sometimes when the ATM machine went wrong, there are some software errors, software bugs. They use this kind of log to discover when does the problem happens. So this is just a debug log. But how did the attacker know this kind of log exists on the ATM machine? And actually, amongst all the 2,000 ATM machines, only 60 ATM machine has this kind of log. Only 60 ATM machine has this. They are with the same model, so they all have this log. And attacker already know this. So they really study hard. They really do a lot of reconnaissance before they hold the actual attack. Okay, so after the ATM hack case, now we are going to introduce the Bitcoin exchange hacks case. MC is going to present this part for us.
Okay. Okay. People talking about the Bitcoin exchange hacking, I'm going to simply introduce the background of Bitcoin exchanges in South Korea. This table is, in this slide lists the 4 famous Bitcoin exchanges in Korea. Depends on how large and popular they are. The transaction amount per day vary. Exchanges B is the largest one. The transaction amount per day is about 735 million US dollar. It is great reason to have. In this year, 4 Bitcoin exchanges were attacked. Attacker impersonated the public institute like police agency and financial security institute and major banks, etc., to send spear phishing emails. 9 different email accounts were used in spear phishing email attack. 4 out of 9 email accounts were stolen, and the rest were confirmed created by the attacker. The attacker deployed mobile malware to compromise the mobile phone and passed the SMS authentication to create new email account. The detail of mobile malware was disclosed recently by Palo Alto and McAfee. Their research has mentioned that the mobile malware has some similarity with the Trojan manuscript from Blue Nerf, and they have linked the malware Lazarus group. However, they didn't know who has their target. In fact, the mobile malware was deployed in the Bitcoin exchange hacking campaign. We obtained a sample shared by government investigative agency related to the Bitcoin exchanges hacking. And the sample is very similar to the sample described in the Palo Alto's report. Totally 25 people related to the Bitcoin exchange were targeted in this campaign. They received the emails attached with malicious HWP documents, which is the most popular word processor in South Korea, like Microsoft Office. The attacker used the vulnerability of Ghost script interpreter installed with HWP processor. Therefore, Ghost script was removed in recent version of HWP because of the vulnerability issue. However, many people still using the old version. Besides vulnerability, Ghost script can also create files without any vulnerability. I will explain it later. This graph is showing the attack vector of this campaign. To send the spear phishing email, the attacker not only used compromised email accounts, but also new email accounts created by them. In South Korea, the largest email service provider require SMS authentication during creating email accounts. So the attacker infected some mobile phone with the mobile version malware, then used the compromised phone to do the authentication. After that, they sent phishing emails to deliver malware several times from July to August. After the malware successfully installed on the victim's machine, it connects to C2 server to send victim's information. This is the attack timeline of Bitcoin exchanges. From May this year to August, totally 8 spear phishing email attacks targeting users of Bitcoin exchanges and exchange service providers. The first attack was launched in May. The attack targeted users of Bitcoin exchanges, and after 2 months, the target of the attack has changed from users to exchanges providers. I will talk about what happened this May. and 2 out of 8 emails used by Bitcoin exchanges hacked. This is the first attack in May was targeted the Bitcoin exchange's users. They impersonated the National Tax Service and guided the victim to open the attached file. The email shows in the slide is the actual spear phishing email. You can see the translation at the right side. This email was sent to many Bitcoin exchanges users, but it wasn't confirmed how users' information was leaked. The malware dropped by this spear phishing email is similar to the malware manuscript from previous case hacking Korea major bank presented by Ashley. Let's look the red scale on their image. It's a typical feature that unique string are used in storing information from infected PC. Besides those codes, we could see lots of connection of C2 communication protocol and Windows API decoding function and log file creative function, etc. from these 2 samples. After targeting the exchange service users, in July this year, they start to attack the Bitcoin exchanges. They impersonated the Financial Security Institute that I work for. The image on the left side is actual email, and the right side is the translation. The attached file is a document that what was actually issued by my company, but they embedded malicious code and malware in these documents. The file attached in this email is a HWP file. When you open the malicious HWP document with analysis tool, like the left image, you can see 3 PS files in bin data path. These PS files are all malicious. PS files are compressed zip library. After decompress, you can see the postscript in this file. This is an infographic showing all files dropped by this sample. 3 malicious postscript files are included the attached HWP file. Among these 3 postscript files, bin0001.ps file creates HNC check.lnk file, and bin0002.ps file creates HNC bb80.bin file. PostScript language can create a file without any vulnerability. The LNK file is a trigger to execute the bin file. I will explain more on the next pages. The first PostScript file is simple. It creates the LNK file in the startup path. This shortcut file has a command that executes the bin file, which is created by bin0002.ps file, and the binary is a Trojan downloader. The malware will start to execute when the system reboots. This is the third PostScript dropped by HWP file. It exploits the vulnerability of GhostScript to activate shellcode. The attacker used 2 kinds of methods to drop the malware, both LNK file and vulnerability, to make sure the sample works. The third PostScript contains some PostScript and XOR encoded PostScript with shellcode. Also, it embedded 2 malware P binary. One is for 32 bytes OS, and another is for 64 bits. They both same Trojan downloader as the bin file. I can go. Sorry. The vulnerability exploited by this script is kind of similar to CVE code 2017-0261. The process of the exploitation postscript works in order of read, execute, and close. And the vulnerability triggers in the process of close. Through the ROP chain, the shellcode can get an execute permission to load additional embedded malicious code, and finally injects the payload into the specific system process, usually the process of explorer.exe. When the download payload has been executed in memory, it collects infected system information and sends it to C2 server. Also, it tried to download another malware. However, we couldn't get the second stage malware because it was already removed from the C2 server when we investigate. The C2 server in this case is also a compromised website. And this is the second case of attack targeted Bitcoin exchanges. It's an interesting case because this phishing email impersonated as a detective at police station. And in the email, sender asked the receivers to check if there is a member who used the Bitcoin wallet addresses list in the attached Excel file. This case has two attachment files. One of them is a PDF file, and another one is an Excel file. It's different from the case one because the attacker didn't use the HWP file. The normal PDF file embedded a photo of scanned police ID card is trying to convince the receiver that the sender is an actual police officer. And malicious Excel file includes malicious VBS macro script. Once opening the file, execute the script. A file named svc host.exe file will be created and executed. Like I mentioned, the decoy PDF file contains a scanned police ID card photo. This is real police ID card. It seems like the scanned police ID card was leaked through unknown path. The malware dropped by this sample is also a download very similar to previous case. It collects infected system information and sends it to C2 like case one. But the address of C2 other server is different from case one. It tried to download the second stage malware, but it was already removed on the C2 server when I investigated.
Okay, thank you, MC. So we just introduced some attack cases that were attributed to either Lazaro, Bruno, or Andariel groups. And now I'm going to introduce one more case. These cases we actually couldn't attribute to any of this group, but we are highly confident that this sample was from the same country. So before I explain the malware of this case, I would like to give you some introductions about the background. I don't want to mention the real names of these companies, so here I use the first letter as a short. And this instance is about a group that I call it O groups. So O group has a bank called O Bank, and which is located in Egypt, and they also have a bank branch in North Korea. And O groups also runs a telecommunication company. It's called K-Com, and it's located in North Korea too. And the targets here actually has connections with O Bank and North Korea, and correct. The targets has connections with the O Bank in North Korea and the K Telecommunications, and the targets is located in Egypt. So here we highly suspect that the targets is the O Bank in Egypt. And the O groups has shut down their branch in North Korea because of the sanctions applied to North Korea. And the targets were targeted by the samples by the attacker in 2017. So we suspect that this is the reason why they are targeted. And in this case, we observed two interesting samples. These two samples are discovered in May this year. Both of them are exploit CVE 2017-0199 DOCX document. This vulnerability is in Microsoft Office, allow attacker to exploit a flaw that exists in the Windows OLE object interface to deliver malware through a fake HTML file. So upon opening the document, it will connect to the CNC server. So actually, when the document is open, you can see a dialog here. It's showing it's connecting to the CNC server. And this graph is showing the files in this sample. First, the document file, it would connect to the CNC server through the exploit and then download a fake HTML file. And this HTML file contains the PowerShell script. It will connect to the CNC server to download 3 different files. Each of them are a children downloader, a loader, and a script. And these 3 files will be saved as a 2 JPG file, 2 fake JPG file, and a script file. And this screenshot is showing the HTML file. This is actually not much different from the POC of the exploit template. So the attacker actually just changed the payload here. So here you can see a base 64 encoded PowerShell script, and then after decode, it will show like this. You can see it's trying to connect to a C2 server and download to JPG and the script file. And the IPP files contains encoded VBS script. Is also encoded, and after decoding, you can see it's trying to extract 2 binary in the JPG file, and this you can see from this location. It will extract and extract as the binary name with these 2 different names. It makes it look like a Windows update package, and the first one is children downloader, and the second one is malware we call milk loader. And first, I introduce the children downloader. This children downloader is named Frankie Downloader by Palo Alto, and it needs a specific argument to execute. It supports 3 different kinds of commands, including help, console, and sample. And with help, it's performing the main functions, which is to collect system information, and it will begin to CNC server. And the console is in charge of the setting up for persistent in the registry, and sample is to perform both help and console. And here, when it collects the MAC address of the victim system, it will convert it to a hex string and then use this as the victim ID. And it after it collects the system information, it will store the information like computer name, file version of kernel 32, and the MAC address and the running process encoded, and then sent to C2 server like this. This is the package. And this part is encoded with simple sub and XOR. After decoding, you can see here there's a process running on the victim system. And the downloader, it would of course, download the payload from another C2 server and save them in the temp folder. And you can see in the code, although we actually didn't have the second stage malware because it was removed at the time, but you can see that it's trying to use an argument obey to execute this malware. And obey actually means father in Korean. And the second malware is the milk loader. This malware was named milk because of the PDB string we found in this malware. You can see here the big pool, milk, and that's why Palo Alto called this pool milk. And after running, it will sleep for 6 minutes to bypass detection. And then it will look for, from the code you can see, it will look for a temp file. However, we actually don't have this temp file in the folder. And after it found this temp file, it will try to extract a path from this file and then scanning some other file under this path. So we think this malware should be delivered after the attacker already compromised the network, and probably they use this as the second stage malware. And of course, this loader is used to launch the downloader, so it will create the registry string. Here you can see the Windows update, and then it assigns the help argument to this binary. So, however, the most interesting part about this case, not the malware, is the decoy file. So here in the screenshot, this is the first decoy file. It looked like a reading receive for an email sender. And this should be a fake content, but the receiver email has called out attention. First of all, the receiver is in the name of the old bank. Second, the domain in this email is starcorp.kp. If you're familiar with the internet access in North Korea, you will know that Star Joint Venture is actually a joint venture founded by North Korea government and the Thailand ISP. And so only North Korea use this domain. And then, yeah, you can search it on Google. There's a Wikipedia page showing this. And this is what is more interesting is the second decoy file. This decoy file is the email writing to the target, and based on the last sample, this should be write by or forged as the identity of the bank in North Korea. And the email subject is bank liquidation. This email is a little bit long, so I just call a few interesting parts. The email first apologized for the very late notice of how liquidation was going on. And the writers say they have bad result of loan collections because of the US sanctions on DPRK, which is North Korea. And the email mentions about the sanctions are not only financial and economic domain, but also other aspects which further affect the economy of the country. The sanctions thoroughly raising every source of hard currency income, and many of the clients of the bank is asking for more time allowance to pay the money. The writer signed his name with this, and according to Korean, and this is not a common Korean name, it's more like a North Korea surname. So from this email, it's interesting because it kind of probably telling us that the shifting of the attackers is because of the rough economic issue happening because of the sanction applied to the country. And when we connect to the compromised website, we found the directory browsing was actually not prohibited. So we were able to browse the files on the C2 server. So on the C2 server, we found an interesting folder called AData. In this AData, you can see multiple different folders with the string, and it's obviously the MAC address hex string that I just mentioned. So it's the victim ID. So each folder contains different victims' data. But actually, the attacker are very careful. They remove victim data after a certain of time. So when we investigated, we didn't see much data in this folder. However, we did discover an interesting folder which contained an interesting victim log here. that you can see why it's interesting, because it's a MacBook, but it still has a Windows version. And the IP address here, when we search it, we found it's in Dandong. Dandong is a place very close to the border between China and North Korea, and the relationship of Dandong is very close, not only on the geolocation, but also many people from North Korea go to Dandong to perform trading and other work. Therefore, and based on the time create time of this file, we highly suspect that this record is logged by the testing from the attacker. And on the other hand, another C2 server shows us some information of the clients of this website. This is another C2 JR China. This is a website of a Chinese training company in South Korea. And according to the web page created by this company, their clients, most of their clients are large banks in South Korea. So we suspect that this website, this company was actually compromised, and the attacker used their website to as the C2 server. And before we jump to the conclusion, we want to introduce some other TTP that we found in some other cases and some key findings. So when in the above mentioned cases, we have introduced some delivery methods, including deliver payload with the spear phishing email. This is still the main method they use to deliver payload. Also, they use watering hole, like in the Polish case. And then most of the infrastructure are compromised CNC server. It makes it difficult to track because they abandoned it right after the campaign. And as of the tools, what is special about Andariel groups is that between different malware used by Andariel groups, they actually use many share code between different proprietary malware. And they not only use some proprietary malware, they also use open source malware, like what I list here. And in one of the cases happened recently in Taiwan, they use ransomware to deliver the evidence and tracks after they do the transaction, after they try to do the transaction. And about the targets, I think mostly are banks and so far mostly are banks and financial institute and Bitcoin exchange. And when they target spam, they will look for the SWIFT, the whole SWIFT system. And also we discovered that when they compromise the network, they will first maintain their control in the network for a long time to do the study. They will do the reconnaissance and this to figure out where is the most important data and where is their targets in the targets network. So after they figure this out, they will pick up a time that when everybody is not in the company. For example, this time when they hold the attack in Taiwan, there was a holiday in Taiwan. So at that time when the transaction trying to happen, everybody is at home and nobody is able to react promptly with this case. And this is the map we are making the C2 server used by this attacker. They use a lot of C2 server in South Korea, but also they use some C2 server in China and US and Canada. Also, we have seen some CNC server in Europe too. Some of them are from the hosting server provider. And about the CNC server, there's an interesting fact that we observed that recently we actually, before, like I say, they like to use a lot of compromised CNC server. But recently in some of the attack, we start to discover some of their proprietary CNC server. And when we try to investigate it, a CNC server used by Andariel groups, we went to the hosting server provider and asked them to provide us the registration information. And however, the hosting server provider reveals that since the server was paid with Bitcoin, they don't have any information about the identity. And this is actually pretty smart because when they, no, this is not smart, but I will explain why. And, but it keeps the anonymity. I mean, it makes it difficult to track the identity of the CNC server's owner, and they don't have to pay time to search for any website they are able to compromise anymore. And why I say it's not smart? Because the Bitcoin prices keep going up. So I think if I have Bitcoin, I will keep it. And we also do some analysis about the sample's compile timestamp. This is the graph we drew from the samples of Andariel groups, and we set the time zone to GMT plus 9, which is the Korea time zone. And you can see, interestingly, there is a peak here around 9 a.m. in the morning, and then a dramatic drop here at noon, and then it goes up again in the afternoon, and then drop again around 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So this graph basically match our working time, right? Like we go to work in the morning, and then we go for lunch at noon, and then we go back, and then we leave the office. So from this graph, we assume that these attackers following the working, like normal weekday work time, which means that hacking is their work. So it matches up assumption that they are nation-state attackers. So that's the conclusion. In this talk, we try to emphasize the fact that we have seen increasing trends of nation-state attackers using cyber espionage capability for financial gains, and we introduced some texts from Lazaro Group, Spoonerov, and Andrew Group. They not only target bank, but also Bitcoin users and exchange and the ATM machine. In many cases, the attackers show strong knowledge to the compromised system, network environment, and their targets. They tailor their tools and develop zero-day for the targets, which means that they study hard about their targets. And it's difficult to track these attacker groups only with the CNC infrastructure because, like I said, they use compromised CNC server, and even they own the C2 server, they pay with Bitcoin. So therefore, be familiar with the tools and tactics of these groups is one of the key to defend against them. It means that they study you hard, so you need to study them hard too. Okay, that's all I'll talk. Any questions? Don't be quiet.
I have a microphone, so if you just put your hand up and I'll find you.
Hi.
Yep. Right.
Hi, thank you for that. It's a more general question. I'm just curious, I'm way in the back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a general question. I'm wondering, is it dangerous to be doing this kind of work against North Korea? I mean, or do researchers get any messages, or, I mean, if you're easily identifiable and you're disrupting their operations, do they have a history of kind of coming at you, or is it fine?
Basically, we try to don't make ourselves a target, and I'm from Taiwan, so it could be okay for me, but MC is from Korea, so how do you think? Well, before this talk, he just keep telling me that don't talk too sensitive detail. I still want to go back to Korea. Yeah, like this. So, yeah. Any other question? Okay, so
Here,
there's one more
again
there.
in the back.
Hi.
So basically, what's the timeline, or how much it takes you to spot or to detect those kind of attacks, or compromised hosts in a company, in a bank, or anything like that? because you showed before the timeline since the attack started, some data gathering, but not actually when the let's say patient 0 got infected.
Do you mean how much victim?
After how much time you detected that you had the patient 0 in your company, or the companies you work with?
Oh, how many patients? How many? I think he's asking. Everyone can hear me. I think he's asking. I think he's asking how many cases you discovered during.
He's asking how long it took for you to discover patient 0 in the company, I think.
One case.
Between the first case to the second case, how much time do you discover? Oh yeah, how long did you? For which case? I think it vary between different cases. But usually how long will you discover?
I can count it.
He said he cannot count it. I mean, I think it's vary and depends on different environment and how lucky they are. Because one of the case, which one? One of the case, it was discovered actually from the email service provider side, because when they are investigating another case, they investigated to the email service provider and then discovered that campaign actually targets other case. So in that case, the other case was discovered promptly, just because they happens to be investigating the email service. So I think I kind of couldn't give you a certain answer to this question. Probably you can write us and we can tell you more about this. Okay? Another question there. No, we don't have, okay. They say we don't have time. So if you have any other questions, you can feel free to send email for us. We will answer your question. Okay? Thank you.